Reef keepers of the world, welcome. On the show, every time we do this show, we are trying to give you the feel of what it's like to be at a reef keeping conference after hours, after drinks, in somebody's hotel room at 4 in the morning, where the most interesting conversations happen about reef aquaria. This show is laced with profanity. So if you have sensibilities that don't like profanity, or you think your children have no idea what profanity means, you're wrong. They know. This show isn't for you. If it is for you and you're at work, turn up the volume as loud as you can and grab your butt, because we're going to kick your ass with love. It's Reef Beef.
Welcome, Reef Beef Nation. My name is Benjamin.
My name is Richard.
And today we are going to talk about, I got 2 new clients, so we're going to talk about some stuff I saw there. The main thing of the show, we're going to talk about science literacy in our hobby. And I'm going to beef about clients installing things wrong and then blaming the manufacturer. And also, this show is brought to you by saltwateraquarium.com and Biota, but more on that later.
Lots been going on in my system, Ben.
What has been going on, really?
Lots and lots been going on the last few days. I replaced all the lock line above.
Yeah, it gets busted frequently, doesn't it?
No, it just over time it degrades. It's in that bright light, so I just replace it. It gets cracks and it drips. So I replaced it a different way. I'm just coming up and over now instead of like along the edge. So it's a lot easier to get into the tank to do maintenance. I had to redo part of the display because some stuff had to be moved around. I cleaned everything in here. I ordered some more skylights because I'm adding more stuff under the house.
Oh, cool.
I'm going to do, there's a research space I'm going to put there, and I'm also probably going to do some coral spawning. So
that
I'm
must
prepping
make
for
maintenance fun, crawling around in your belly.
Well, it'll only be 12 inches tall, and it'll be right by the door. So I'm not trying to do a thick anything, a tall tank down there. And it'll be so easy because it'll just be run by a dose. There'll be water coming in and water going out. Boom, it's added to the system. I can do 100,000 milliliters a day. So that's a lot.
What about
I also put a pond in.
Pond?
Yeah, because I'm an idiot. I had a space, so I dug a hole, and then I dug the hole again, and I put a 150-gallon Rubbermaid feed trough that I had that used to be a sump 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I dug that most of the way into the ground. Right now, it's running with one of the big Vectra pumps.
Really?
Which I think is too much flow.
Yeah.
It's on the lowest setting. And I think I'm just going to experiment with, putting some plants out there and some mosquito kind of fish. Nothing crazy out there. And we'll see how it goes. No real filtration or anything. We'll just kind of see how it goes.
I have a similar type system, no filtration at all, but just I think you call it ulva or water lettuce on the top.
Yeah.
And actually my compost pile is right next to it. So it's kind of cool. During the summer, the water lettuce goes way too crazy, but I did that on purpose for the filtration. I just chunk it into the compost pile.
Perfect.
Trying to create the circle of life.
Perfect.
Hey, your daily water changes, have those increased at all?
No, they're still at 30 liters a day.
Yeah.
I got some interesting ICP test results back that make me very squinty about ICP tests. But now I've got to fucking follow up that again. Yeah. So when I get that data back, I'll let you know. I've got to send out more tests on Monday.
I have this new client that does ICP tests periodically. And I don't know if they're all the same, but this one gives you like a basic grade. I guess they tally everything and they're like, you got a 95 in this last one. You got an 83. And he was like, what does it mean? And I'm like, you gotta quit paying attention to that shit.
Yeah. Apparently my systems are high in gold.
I'll be right over.
Isn't that weird? Um, so yeah, I got to do a little bit more because they seem backwards. And also, so I tested the tank that's at the end of the system, right? That gets 30 liters a day and goes out. So it's getting 100% water change every 30 days. Damn. Right? It had way fewer metals and weird readings than my display tank had. Huh. That seems very confusing to me. It seems like they should be much more in line.
Yeah, because everything's dumping into it, right?
Right. So I got to do another set of tests, and we'll see how that goes, and then I'll probably be grumpy about it.
Do you realize that you're actually dumping gold out of your house?
I am. And I fragged a bunch of stuff and took it to the store.
Cool. I bet you that store was happy.
So that's good. So I got rid of a bunch of stuff.
So the store gets that blue stag that I've always wanted?
The store has not gotten that blue stag. Snowman wants me to do a video of the tank, right? So I don't want to chop up all that stag until after that video. And then I got to send it to Joe because you never asked for it.
Guess what I have over there?
Mushrooms?
Yeah, I did.
For me?
Yes. Not only the ruby red Recordia, but also that real sexy. We'll show a picture right here of both of these. The ruby red Recordia that I have, but also this really crazy. I picked up a new client. He's got these crazy, I guess, green and blue shroom.
Really, they are exciting. I want them.
Yep.
I made a space for them up there.
Cool. Hey, I got two new clients last week.
Yeah.
They're very, very polar opposites of each other.
Congratulations.
One's a big 300, well, not big, but 300 gallon. It was a reef tank, but this person went through a divorce, and the person that had to leave the house was doing the tank, but the person that stayed in the house funded it.
Is that why they got divorced? Because he was doing the tank?
So, yeah. She's like, why don't you do me and not the tank? But so, I mean, obviously in that scenario, an aquarium suffers bad, but also I don't know how, bad it was, but like the guy took a lot of the things, and it's not a bad setup. It's got full Neptune apex on it. Even has a trident. It's got Seche pumps. It had Kessel lights, but he took half of them. Again, not a bad setup. The aquascaping in there and very exciting. But anyway, so I gave her prices on me turning it into a better reef tank, and then my maintenance prices. It was just on the cusp of what she could afford, and so instead I took her in the direction. I'm going to make it a saltwater fish only tank with an insert. I'm going to use Rockin' Reefs.
Cool.
And do an insert in there. And some people, beefers might say, oh, a lot of people say when you're not doing a reef tank, they're like, oh, that sucks. But honestly, you can have a lot of fun with a fish-only system because you can mess with large breed angels and wrasses and puffers and stuff a lot.
I would also so much rather people go with inserts than live coral if they don't want to keep live coral alive.
Yeah, I mean, if she wasn't going to commit to having me go hardcore, I didn't want to play around with that. So let's just do inserts.
There's nothing wrong with inserts.
But I did see a crazy thing because he's got a big canopy on the top, a really big canopy on the top. And this guy put fans in there because he was obviously having a humidity issue in there, but he didn't vent the canopy. But anyway, so this guy had fans in there just moving and
fans to move the air around, but no way to get the air out. So is everything fucking rusted?
Oh, big time. There's two Neptune auto feeders in there, and out of the USB plugs, they have rust marks running out. But it's weird. They still work, but there's actual rust marks. I'll show a picture right here. There's actual rust marks running out of the units. But the funny part I wanted to get to on this is, so there was only the lights he had on there were Kessel. I think they're called A9X or AP9X. And I went to grab one of them. It wasn't plugged in or anything, but I went to grab one of them. So I was going to unscrew it and take it down. And when I tilted it, water pours out of it. and I know it was condensation because I looked on the top of the canopy and it actually had those, like drops that weren't heavy enough to fall yet. So I had like condensation just sitting on wood and drywall. So we're gonna fix all that crud, but
Oh my God. So the moral of the story is, this is the kind of stuff that still shocks me that it happens. It's like, we've known for 30 years that you need to exhaust air away from your tank because otherwise it gets wet. How is that still? How do people not know that?
Well, I guess here's another thing with that much condensation on there. So a lot of there's stainless steel line that was holding the lights, but I think it's obvious that the companies that make that, they use low grade stainless steel that still rusts because they were rusted solid. And then one of the pieces too, that I don't know what to call it. It's like those push things where you can run the steel cable through.
So you got the steel cable and it goes through the lock.
Yeah.
And so you can change the height of the lights.
Yeah, like the pinch lock.
Yeah.
But apparently, I guess those things are brass and then electroplated because it did have green oxidation all over it.
Yeah. There are different materials in there, and those will rust up.
And you can tell where it had been dripping into the tank. So, maybe iron from the steel, you could debate, is that a big deal or not? But certainly when you see green oxidation, because brass is what, copper and tin? And I mean, that's, and when people are like, why are my corals not doing good? It's like, gee, I don't know. You got, copper oxidation dripping into the tank.
Yeah. Ventilate your hood. This room doesn't have great ventilation, but most of the year on the window in the room behind this room, I have a fan blowing air out of the house.
Yeah.
And I also have a fan that's on full time in this room to keep the air moving around so it goes out other places. And on the main tank that's built in, the first thing I did was chop a hole in the wall and put a fan there to blow outside.
Yeah.
Because, wow, water inside the light.
Water. I mean, and I took a video of it, but I didn't get the initial, like a large amount of water came out. And then I took a video again and it was just drip, drip. But I was like, I'd never seen water pour out of a unit. And I'm glad I didn't plug it in or anything like that.
That's spooky.
It's going to be fun too. And you would laugh at me that I didn't know this, but I had to call a buddy of mine because in that situation, I wasn't entirely sure how to gain control of the apex because she had to tell the husband to, I had to give him my username and he had to put it in there and then he had to kind of excuse himself. And then when I go on there, I have to sort of make sure that he's not on there. But the funny thing is he hadn't done it yet, so I don't know what's going on.
Hey, Ben, who is this podcast brought to you by?
This podcast is brought to you by saltwateraquarium.com.
I love saltwateraquarium.com.
That's crazy. I do too.
Why do you love them? Because I bet I love them more.
But I don't know if we can quantify that. But I love saltwateraquarium.com because they have everything that you need in this industry and they can get it to you very quickly. He has all his grandparents and great grandparents and even great grandparents working there. And they just join hands across America and they get your package to you. But they also have an in-house cleanup crew that's in a fishless system. So they have all sorts of cleanup crew in there, and they're not pushing it off to some other wholesaler. They're doing it in-house. They label it on the bag. You get big specimens. I like them because I like Kenneth and I like their company. I like they got an app on the phone that makes it easy to order.
I like that you're all defensive. That I'm like,
I
is
like
that
them
the only reason?
One time I was drowning at a beach and saltwateraquarium.com saved me.
That's right. My father was in the war and saltwateraquarium.com sent him a new helmet.
Yeah, took a bullet for him.
Yeah. Saltwateraquarium.com, we've been using them since a million years ago, since they started. They've always been great. They've always had everything we need, almost everything. They've got great discounts. They've got great perk programs, and they're really good at trying to get information out, right? So you could text them and they'll give you answers to your questions. They'll try to help you out in real time. They've got all kinds of content on their website. Mark Callahan does videos for them. So I think they're great. And if you need a product, they've got it. So go check them out down below, saltwateraquarium.com. When you check out, do add something about Reef Beef, because it's really, really funny when they contact us and tell us about that. So check them out, saltwateraquarium.com. Anything else with your new clients?
The other one is something that doesn't usually happen to me. Whereas this guy contacted me, and I go, and his tank is it's great. I gotta be honest. Like, I don't get phone calls from people that have great tanks, and his tank is great. He's got full Neptune Apex on it. And it was funny, he has a KH Guardian, and I asked him why he didn't do a Trident. And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, that's fair enough. But this is kind of interesting because I've never messed with a KH Guardian, so now I get to do that.
Yeah, well, I'll be interested to see what you think of it, because I haven't messed with one either.
Yeah. It clicks a lot. I went there to clean the tank already yesterday, and I'm sitting there, and it clicks a whole bunch. I'm like, keep clicking, you clicky thing.
Yeah, clicker. That's a feature, not a bug.
But it's kind of crazy because it looks so far like a lot of the components are like exposed. It's not a more like refined looking product like Trident is, all enclosed, kind of sexy in that thing.
Yeah.
Which is cool in its own way, because I like that look too, just like a raw industrial look, which is sort of what it more looks like.
Yeah, I guess as long as you have ventilation in the room, that's okay.
No, this guy's tank is great. It's kind of cool. He's just a guy that wanted oversight, and I was like, cool, I'll be glad to do it.
Nice. Very nice.
Very nice.
Oh, I had something else happen that was exciting.
Do it.
I woke up and about 10 o'clock came around, and I looked at the display tank and the lights weren't on.
Uh-oh.
I thought that was weird. And then I went to the back and looked at the lights, and the EB832 was lit up like it should be on. I thought, oh shit, are the lights dead? I unplugged the lights and put them into a regular plug, and they came right on. And then I went, oh shit. And then I realized that the pumps were on. The wave pumps were on, but the gyre pumps were not getting any power. So I started on Fusion, I started flipping the switches for that EB832, and the light would change color, but no relay was clicking. So the EB832 was bad.
Really?
This went bad.
How long had you had it?
When did these come out? Like 2016, 2017?
Yeah. All the way
since then. This is one of the original ones that I ever got.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah, so I don't mind that at all. And so I was like, oh shit. Oh wait, I have an extra one for just this reason.
I was about to say, because your tank is so apex intensive. Certainly you carry another EBA, because if your
absolutely.
EBA goes down, like nothing happens.
Yeah. And so I swapped it all out and put it all back in. Everything worked. I moved all the code, and then I was like, hey, this was great. And, it took me half an hour, and yay, right? This is all good. And there's a new task in Fusion. Basically, I could just plug in the new EB832, and then I say, make this one like that one.
Oh.
Right? So you can do that with any module now. You say, make this one into this one, and then it will delete the old one for you. So that's cool. And yeah, I got an extra one of these.
Cool.
Actually, I got two of these. So I'm a big fan of having backups for things that are important.
Oh, certainly.
And how much easier was it for me to have an EB832 in a box and be able to throw it in right when I needed it, rather than having to go out and get one.
It turns an issue into a non-issue.
Yeah, half an hour, back up and running. Everything was great.
So, Richard.
Yeah.
You're a pretty smart feller.
Well, that's nice of you to say.
What I want to do is, dude, for forever, since I've been in this industry, first of all, Man, you know, the first contact I ever, not physical contact, but the first I ever heard of you was reading like the skeptical reef keeping,
Mm.
you know, stuff. And I was like, oh, damn. Because, you know, I've always been, you know, without being Mr. Science head myself necessarily, I've always been, you know, in attune to that sort of thing. And oh my God, you like get to the point. But
More about me.
yeah, more. No, but in vein of all that stuff, I've always seen a distinct lack of, like, I guess I would call scientific literacy in this industry. You know, with the
Yeah.
questions that people ask, and then I would also say not just the questions that people would ask, but just the bullshit that they accept.
Yeah, I think science literacy is the wrong.
Word.
I think it's more of critical thinking skills.
Okay.
Science literacy, I think, would be slightly different.
Okay.
But I know what you're talking about. I mean, that's the whole reason I got sick of. I felt terrible watching people make basic logic mistakes and cost them time and money, right?
Then they get defensive when you talk to them about it sometimes.
Yeah. And so, you know, I started the Skeptical Reef Keeping series because I thought, well, I know about this stuff because I have a degree in philosophy. And, you know, if people thought about this more, it would just make lives a lot easier. So, and I know you read Demon Haunted World recently, right?
Yep, I did. Well, I mean, I even though I'm a dumbass, I grew up watching Nova and watching Carl Sagan and Jacques Cousteau's stuff. And I guess it was my mom. My mom was we were always watching these shows that I even remember as a little kid watching like Nova and just barely being able to understand what the guy was talking about. But I had some weird like draw to it. I just always loved that, and it sort of shaped and guided me to the way that I do think. But in that vein, I have a whole series of questions that I want to sort of ask you. I'll ask you, and then you can wax and wane for a while, and then.
Okay, that sounds like fun.
Okay, so, and I don't think you need to necessarily keep them brief, but it's probably about 8 questions or something here.
All right.
All right. So how would you identify snake oil?
Snake oil. Okay, so snake oil is somebody who is trying to get you to do or buy something that doesn't actually do what they say it's going to do. It's a bullshit product, right? Or a bullshit claim. So how do you identify snake oil? I made a baloney detection kit for reef keeping, and I think it was in a talk. I'll have to see if I can find it, which gives you 7 steps. It's based on Sagan's baloney detection kit.
Yeah.
What's the source of the claim, right? So well, let's do it this way. What you want to know is if it's snake oil. So you want to know if the product does what they say it's going to do. So you got to find out what support they have for their claims. If they don't have support for their claims, what are you going to do?
Let me just move to an imaginary product. So this one is saying like removes algae.
So you want to know what the source of the claim is. You want to know what people you trust think of the claim. You want to know is the claim covered in green speak? You know, is it, you know,
eco-friendly?
Eco-friendly
organic.
is usually just weasel words to get you to buy a product, right? It sounds good, but okay, so how is it eco-friendly?
Yeah,
because you sure shipped it in plastic.
Yeah, it came in a plastic bottle, so already strike one.
How is it eco-friendly? You want to know.
I think it feels like you're pushing snake oil on me.
Well,
no, like too many like I know one thing from when I used to work at Equal Aqualizer, and then the backlash that I got and the stuff that I learned on the back end of it, like too many claims.
Yeah. The Mark Weiss products used to, you know, feed your fish, cure diseases, build up a slime coat,
fights algae,
and it fights algae, and
Does your taxes.
helps your biological filtration. And you kind of go, what the fuck?
How's it doing all that? Yeah.
Does it fly in the face of everything we know that we think we know about how reef tanks work?
Yeah.
Right? I remember when LEDs first came out, there was like a little LED with a bubbler in it, and it was for lights, but it had the claim on it helps fight ick.
And where is it now?
It doesn't exist, but it was
hot
like,
damn,
how can this
can't believe it.
possibly fight ick? So if you got a product, if someone says, hey, this does this, the first question you want to go is, what evidence do you have that it actually does
very
that?
few people do that. I mean, very few companies do that.
Well, it's also important, before we get to very few companies do it, is to, what do we mean by evidence, right? And so I don't mean a peer-reviewed article, which would be great. But I mean, why do you think this works? And I think a lot of the stuff we see in the hobby is stuff that makes some kind of sense in your head that it would work. But then the question is, have you shown it to work? Right? So the idea that you could oxidize the free swimming stage of ick would be great, right? But the question then is, why don't whatever you're using to oxidize the free swimming stage of ick should also oxidize stuff you don't want oxidized in your aquarium?
I mean, it sounds like, stuff like that is always confusing to me unless it's based on a marine microbiology study where they did something that specifically affects ick, because otherwise it just sounds like chemo and you're fucking everything up just to fuck up the little thing.
Exactly. So what's the support? I put this product in and it worked. Okay. Well, what else were you doing? What you have to keep asking the questions. What else were you doing to take care of whatever the problem was? Because it could have been those things that worked, not just the last thing you did, which was add this product. So the snake oil is a tricky one because we often don't have any evidence for it working besides testimonials. And testimonials are terrible, especially from random people you don't know about.
My hope is always that, of course, I guess this is tricky, but my hope is always that the aquarium hobby, I guess, as an entity, becomes more savvy to these things. But I can't forget that you get new people in, like, oh crap, I got an algae problem, how do I get rid of this algae? And they're freaking out so much about cyanobacteria that even just a slight suggestion by someone, like, okay, I'll try to put fried eggs in there, this guy said fried eggs will kill cyanobacteria. Yeah. And it's like, and I get that, because when you're new into something and you don't know the difference between, your ass and the hole in the ground, but you do, that would be my suggestion to beginners, is like, when you have problems, depending what they are, but when you have problems, slow down and calm down a little bit, because because of my job, I talk to people that don't know what they're doing and are freaking out. And I always tell them the first things first is a lot of these things you think are problems, you're throwing too much negative energy out. You're freaking out too much.
Yeah, it's just a thing, man. It's just a thing.
And it could take you a month or so to get rid of that algae, but just calm down because you're having a bad experience.
A few episodes ago, we talked about acro-eating flatworms that I had in my tank. And some of the comments from some people were like, wow, he's so calm about having acro-eating flatworms. And
what are you supposed to do?
Well,
nuke
what are you
the
gonna,
tank?
Yeah, well, some people do that. They break down their tank and restart, and it's interesting. I mean, certainly that's a way to go, but
if you want to keep redoing your tank all the time,
but we see I think the problem is with all these reef recipes now that we're seeing is anything that varies from the recipe is dangerous and should be killed. So people freak out, and I don't like recipes for your reef tank for that very reason, because what are you trying to accomplish? And we're dealing with an ecosystem in a box that's always in flux. Yeah. And the idea that you're going to set it and forget it is nuts. So get rid of that. Hey, Ben,
Richard.
do you know that Biota, the Biota group, Biota Aquarium, Biota is a place that you can go. It's really kind of the place now that you can go for all that kind of captive bred saltwater stuff that everyone always says they want.
Um,
Did you know
yeah,
that?
yeah, I
Yeah.
did know.
They got a lot of stuff.
They do.
So we're proud to have Biota sponsoring some of our shows. I've been to their place in Palau and seen how they do things, and they've been around long enough because Tom Bowling is tenacious, and he's tenacious in all the right ways. He doesn't cut corners. He doesn't skimp over things. He goes to bat to do it the right way and the way we always want it to be done. So I'm really thrilled that they're doing it, and I'm really thrilled to support them, and I'm really thrilled to have their animals, which I do, and I'm really thrilled that they're supporting us. What do you think?
I think I know that I have biota animals in every single saltwater aquarium that I do. As a matter of fact, cleaned 4 tanks today, and every single one of those had it. And I was just looking. I just filmed the Synchiropus splendidus. That when I got it was super tiny, but now it's about maybe inch and a half,
Yeah.
and kicking butt. I love it. It's
So much
I know
fun.
everyone's heard me say this over and over again, but honestly, it's the only way I would get Synchiropus splendidus, Mandarin dragonet. It's the only way I would get them.
Yeah. So listen, go to the link below. If you order from them, tell them you got it from the beef because that will make them laugh. But people who have always said they wanted to get captive bred animals that are done sustainably and responsibly,
Do
you
it.
got it. Yeah, you can. You just have to. So you can order direct from them or from any good retailer. And if you know a retailer that doesn't carry Biota stuff, get them to Biota. We like them. Do it.
Love you,
Get it.
Biota.
Biota.
Well, so here, this next question is sort of, an obvious sequel to that question. So how do you evaluate whether a product is doing something beneficial or not? And so my thought for that, Richard, is like things that do have scientific validity, like let's say amino acids. But then, so I would say it's tricky because, and trust me, beefers, like some of these questions that that you're hearing, like I ask myself still after 343 years of doing this, I still ask myself this, hey, maybe I should add amino acids to that tank. Then I go add amino acids for like 3 months. For whatever reason, I run out of it for 3 months. And then I look back, I'm like, why did I add amino acids? I don't know. Did it do something? I don't know. That coral over there looks like it's a little more blue. Is it because of the amino acids? I have no freaking clue.
Yeah. I think the most dangerous thing that reefers have to deal with is post hoc ergo proctor hoc, which is it happened after, therefore was caused by. It's the biggest. It's the easiest fallacy for people to fall into, and the classic example of it is the cock crowed in the morning, and then the sun came up, so the cock crowing in the morning is causing the sun to come up.
Yeah.
And we now know that that is untrue. That
And if your cock didn't crow, then that sun ain't coming up.
Yeah, it ain't coming up. So, any product you add, and then you think how do you evaluate that the product actually did something? Does it, my corals look better? What the fuck does that mean?
And not to jump in because you're the one answering the questions, but the other thing too is like, so the question is, how do you evaluate whether it's doing something or not? First of all, if you introduce, like, let's say adding amino acids, don't do 8 other things as well, because then how do you know what did what?
Yeah. People always think that the last thing they did is what made the difference in their tank. And we don't know, we don't know if there's no way to tell that. So you'll find people who've done 8 to 10 different things to deal with an algae problem, and then they add something in a bottle and they go, that's what did it. It's like, well, but you've been dealing with algae for 6 months, which might be as long as we expect it to be problematic anyway and burn itself out. So you can't really say that the last thing you did is what made the difference. So how do you evaluate whether it's beneficial? Again, I think what we're lucky with in the hobby is there are people that have been doing it for a long time that you can trust, right? And do they have a lot of people who trust them, right? So Sanjay, it's pretty clear Sanjay has got a lot of people who are smart who kind of listen to what he says about lighting, right? And about reef keeping. He's got good thoughts and good experience. And he's got a tank that looks really good. So if you're going to take anybody's advice, make sure you see what their tank looks like first.
Yeah.
Because, there's a guy who wrote a book and he's had his tank for 50 years or something. And, and it's great. And honestly, when I look at that pictures of that tank, I'm just like, that's not a tank I want. So I don't, and then you start looking at his advice and go, well, actually you changed aquariums once. I mean, it starts to fall apart and you just go, oh man, no, you haven't had the same, you've had a few fish for a long time, but you've also moved through a lot of fish through the last 30 years. So yeah. It's like, yeah, your claims fall apart. You got it. So find people who have tanks that you like and then talk to them and see if they sound reasonable. And when you ask them, why do you think that works? If they say, I don't know, they're great people because they're willing to tell you when they don't know something. They're also willing to tell you, I keep adding that because it makes me feel good. Or they will tell you, look, I've added that and here's where the numbers changed. And so I saw something I can report to you as different from before. And they will also be able to tell you, yeah, I'm not sure, but it sure feels like it did something to me. Which is something you can take from someone who's been around for a long time. You might want to listen to them. And they've had successful tanks for a long time. It feels like something changed and it feels better. And it could be this, or this. And, one of those things is what you've just asked me about. So, yeah, I used that and it feels to me like it did something, but I can't really support that. Yeah. Great. That's a great piece of advice. That's awesome advice.
Yeah.
So not everything we're going to have has got real, you can't really prove or show that it's working in a way that would be concrete. But what can compel you, what evidence makes you think that what they're saying about whatever the product is worked, it makes sense. You have to be able to evaluate that on your own.
It is crazy because if I get together, 20 people who I would consider advanced reefers, and you're going to have 20 very different ways to do things, which is great. It's not a problem. That's what I would also want, beginner reef aquarists to understand. You get in there, oh, now I got a reef tank. It's like, now how do I do this? And it's like, well, sit down, and because there's like 800,000 different ways to do this. Yes and no. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, everyone that I take over a tank or this or that, oh, I was adding this. No, don't add that garbage. This new customer that I got, that the other one, the one where the tank is well put together, he was adding a bunch of stuff on a episode that's going to come out later. I discussed because he was doing an ICP test and the company was telling him his vanadium was low. And so, So I was wondering, and so he said, why do I need to add this? And I was like, dude, don't do that. But what I got to is when I got to his house, he had a bunch of other chemicals he was at. Should I continue on this? Should I do this? Should I do this? And I asked him, I said, how often are we doing water changes? And he said, well, my past provider was doing them like once every 2 months. And I was like, meh. And so I said, let me do this. I said, quit adding all that stuff and just let me do water changes with a good quality salt. And so, I mean, we just did the first water change yesterday, but I'm there every 3 weeks. So I'm changing, it's a 110 gallon aquarium and I'm changing 2 7-gallon buckets of water every visit. So
that should keep the vanadium way up.
You'd think so. Because the salt I use is fortified with vanadium.
With vanadium?
Yeah. because that's important.
You know, there's been a few attempts at having like advanced reef keepers forums. They always fizzle out because advanced reefers don't have much to talk about. You know what I mean? It's like every once in a while someone will have something in, hey, I'm trying this. What do you think of this? But it's like, what do we got to do? We're not talking about nitrates. Say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
We can also just message each other.
Well, yeah.
Private message and say, "Hey, Richard, what do you think about this?"
There's just the ongoing discussion, goes away after a while because you agree on so much. And so, hey, what do you think about water changes? Anybody who I just said that, who you think is an advanced reef keeper has pretty much the same answer about that.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah, they're pretty good. Hey, do them.
With different rates and amounts and
and and they're not going to blink when you go, do an 80% water change. They'll go, yeah, okay. They're not going to have that brown belt reefer discussion of, but that'll shock the system.
Yeah.
Nah, not really.
Not if you mixed it correctly and have parameters close enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
anyway, I'm off your topic.
Yeah. So I kind of answered this one earlier, but why is doing multiple things to solve one problem not necessarily helpful?
Yeah, it's because you never know what you're doing is making the difference. Now, that's a really hard one to deal with in practice, though. And I do it too. We all do it. When bad things are happening, you do several things that might have an effect that you think might mitigate the issue. Yeah. So that's a hard one. That's a really hard one. But just be kind of realistic about it.
Here's one that has more bite where you're going to be able to wax on this one for sure.
Oh, I sure hope so.
What does it mean to be skeptical?
Skeptical is not cynical. People think cynical is skeptical, but it's not. I want everything to work. I want there to be a Bigfoot. I want micro bubbling to work on my tank. I want the eco aqualizer to work. Man, if all these things did what they said, my life would be a lot easier. But you have to have an open mind, but if your mind is too open, your brain will fall out and that's Tim Minchin quote, and that's no good either. So what it means to be skeptical is to look at everything with a critical eye and say, what's the evidence for that to be true?
Oh, tell your story that you were involved in that conversation, because that's a good example of that.
Which one?
The one where the people did that happen at gunpoint.
Oh, there's somebody was talking about the Lacey Act amendments, and they were saying, it's going to get worse. I saw somebody who, I know a lady who had a crayfish that's illegal in our state, and the Fish and Wildlife came with guns drawn.
Yeah, 5 agents with guns drawn.
Something, yeah. And I said, and that's the exact kind of thing I go, really? Squint,
like, where's the article? What?
Extraordinary claims are going to require extraordinary evidence, right?
Yeah.
And this I wanted some evidence more than hearsay, right? Or anecdote, because anecdotes are most often wrong because the human brain is often wrong. So I said, hey, can you link me to something that said that was true? I'm really interested in that. That would be really interesting.
Boom, the story changes.
Well, first it was something else. It was like another story on top of that.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, that's great, but can you? I want to know about that particular thing about the guns, because that's a big deal. If Fish and Wildlife is doing that, I want to know that. And then the story completely changed, and they said, well, I misspoke, and that's not what happened. And the hard thing about that is everyone who read that, who didn't read down into the comments, is like, oh, shit, Fish and Wildlife is showing up at people's houses with guns drawn.
Well, yeah, but so to say that they were drawn, But here's another thing. I mean, especially in Texas, is fish and wildlife have guns on their hip. I mean, that's just,
But
it's
that's
police came into the house and they had guns. Yes, police have guns.
yeah. So that's very different. It was guns
And
drawn.
guns drawn. Yeah.
Was the claim, and
The part I didn't
oh,
like
and then
is
they came back and said, somebody told me this firsthand, and I was like, any documentation? And it was like, nope.
yeah, and at the very end they were like, well, I misspoke. And it's just like, but the thing I didn't like about that conversation too is because I don't know if it's just me, but I was reading sort of like political and even racial undertones in what the guy was saying. And then, so you'll get that's what I sort of annoys me about this world is someone makes a comment, and if it goes in your ideological category, then you just dismiss any need for any sort of documentation or evidence. You're just like, oh yeah, that guy's right. He said that they're mean to white people.
Right.
And, yep, that's true. That thing happened. And it's just like and so with the way I think is like, people put this into their brain and they just build up this giant imaginary case that all this shit is happening to white people, but based off of these stories, and like none of this shit is really happening.
Right.
Maybe a couple of things happen and it's just completely blown out of proportion. And everyone's clutching their pearls and it's just like insanity. Just accepting, things like that. Oh, Lacey Act guns drawn. They're going to come get your crawfish. I can say this without being a federal agent, but trust me, the police are not being dispatched to your house to grab your crawfish all over the United States. I mean, it sounds just like the people that freak out about gun grabs. You know what I mean?
Well, and it's funny, I think that ended up by saying, they were intimidated and it's like, well, yeah, if Fish and Wildlife comes to you to confiscate something, from you, you're going to be intimidated.
Yeah.
Of course you are.
I've worked at stores that there was this, I guess I shouldn't say his name, but there was a federal agent that would come in, a Texas Game and Wildlife.
Yeah.
It would come in all the time, and we were friends with him because he knew that the owner of the store was not trying to do anything bad, but all the time he'd come in and confiscate. And like a tricky one is peacock bass, because like year after year after year, they would come in, to legality, and then they would drop out of legality. And I remember for 3 years in a row, it like would flip back, and we're like, let's just not get peacock bass because we don't know, because then this agent would come in and like, oh, I got to grab those peacock bass. And like, what? Did it really? And of course he had the book right there, and we're like, oh, okay, go for it.
Yeah. And I also question the whole idea that Fish and Wildlife went to somebody's house to get a crayfish.
Yeah. I could understand a store. And I mean, I'm telling you, like I was at the store, I knew this guy. Because then when I went on to work at the zoo, I knew him in a different way, and it was the same guy. Yeah. So he would bring us stuff.
So I want to get back to the thing about you asked about, it's not that I don't think Fish and Wildlife went to their house to get their crayfish. I don't think that happened based on what I know about Fish and Wildlife. But if it did happen, I certainly want to know. And I'm going to need more than just somebody told me that that's what happened.
Just a comment section on a forum.
Well, there's too many ways that could be wrong. People are unreliable. But
witnesses. That's also the telephone game.
Absolutely.
It ends up to where I have a hard time believing, first of all, that wildlife would come to your house to grab a crayfish. I suppose it could be possible. It sounds highly improbable, but it turns out like one agent got a crayfish from a lady, and then it's 5 agents, and then they have M4s, and then
it was that they, yeah, right.
They just dropped a JDAM on her house.
It's also, I think the claim was that they had it for 10 years.
Who has a crayfish for 10 years?
Well, there is that, but it was also like, why would Fish and Wildlife go, they're just not really in the habit of.
Like they got your 10-year-old crawfish, and then they're like high-fiving in your driveway, and they're like, let's go find a guppy.
Yeah, they've got enough problems going to,
I was about to say
dealing,
poaching and
dealing with people who are bringing in, elephant legs.
hunting out of season, poaching,
Yeah.
no fishing license.
So,
That's mostly what they're doing. I don't think they're looking for 10-year-old crawfish.
What else you got?
Does correlation equal causation?
No. Next question.
How do I separate marketing claims from actual data?
That's a really hard one because most marketing claims don't have actual data.
They sound good.
They sound good. They all sound reasonable. So, it's the same stuff we were talking about before. Talk to somebody you trust, ask for documentation. When you, and there's a problem. What's happening now is you get people referencing a paper that says higher pH is better on the reef. So does that necessarily translate that higher pH is better in your tank?
I mean, I get that thing too, because it's hard for me to vocalize, but like, I mean, that is sort of what we try to do. We try to look what's happening in nature, and I want to try to emulate in that my tank. But I know enough smart people that I talk to about this sort of stuff that, yeah, you sort of do that, but it's not always applicable too, because you're like, I've heard so many claims for like, this is what it does out in the ocean, so this is what it's going to do in your tank. And it's like, I don't think.
Yeah. It's hard to tell. So when, there seems to be a movement now about pH, and it's like, well, people say don't search for pH, but pH is really important. It's like, yeah, pH is really important, but chasing it often leads novice or intermediate hobbyists into an area where they cause themselves a ton of problems.
I would make a point on that, because it's cool to watch people with big coral farms, or people with big maintenance company, or a guy that works at a big public aquariums, just advanced, people that talk about aquarium stuff. So it's cool to watch what they're talking about and their little concepts and this and that. It's valid. It's part of the conversation, this and that. But if I was just walking into the hobby, it's like, you got to just do the basics. If someone's talking about how he builds the top of his tower, well, you just got into tower building, like put the foundation.
So the question is, how much higher pH makes a difference?
Yeah, and there's no like,
and
some people are going to roll their eyes at that, but I'm just saying, I need some documentation from an oceanographer and a aquatic chemist or something like that.
Well, the higher, pH, higher pH is better. With alkalinity and calcium levels, it's, you get the right mix, and that's when your calcification is perfect. But the question is, so what? What are you doing with your tank that you care about that? Is my question. And how much are you going to fight for 0.2 pH?
Yeah. And what if it goes 0.2 past that and your entire tank burns down to the ground?
So it's chasing numbers because someone said you should chase them. That's stupid. Yeah. Chasing numbers because you think this particular number will make a difference to your tank, I'm all for.
Yeah.
Right? So, pH is problematic because it can be a pain in the ass to raise, unless the easy ways are easy for you. Outside air being bubbled into your system is really how you're going to do it, or being able to open a window. If you can't do that, the next is Kalkwasser. And, that can be really bad for your tank. I killed my system twice, different ways, with caulk.
I've killed several tanks with caulk.
Caulk can be very scary. So
that doesn't mean, but I want to say too, it doesn't mean against it. I love Kalkwasser.
Yes,
I love Kalkwasser use. It's just a little bit goes a long way, and depending how you have it set up, can fuck your entire tank up.
Yeah, listen, I run caulk to this day. Yeah. I have outside air bubbled into my skimmer, into my tank to this day, because yes, those things are important. But if I just had a 40-gallon all-in-one system in my house because I liked fish and corals, you know, the benefit to the animals of having 0.2 higher pH is just not that big a deal to chase.
Hey, that's a good point there too. When you're talking about certain parameters and you have a smaller tank, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I'm just thinking like if the smaller the tank you have, you just got to duck out of certain worries.
Well, it's not just that. It's just, what do you give a shit? What are you keeping the tank for?
Well, yeah,
I keep
because
the
then
tank
there's the
because I
question:
like.
are you growing corals to sell them so people buy them? Are you just a hobbyist and you're enjoying your tank? Are you doing this like me? You're doing maintenance, and like what is your purpose?
Yeah, if you're just growing a tank full of corals to have fun with it,
Then just have fun.
just have fun with it, and don't go nuts on it.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. When people say high pH is better, what does that mean?
Oh, I see.
What,
Like better for what? What are
for
you trying
what?
to do?
And
For
and
enjoying
how
your tank.
and how much better?
Yeah.
Well,
the concerns of a coral farm grower, you got to understand, are not necessarily the concerns of just a hobbyist trying to kick it and watch their tank, and is maybe not the concern of what I'm doing as a maintenance company.
Yeah. So if it's easy, oh my God! And also, I gotta say this: Cock Slurry is making a comeback now.
I thought that was bad.
No, Cock Slurry it was a thing that we did for a while. There's always
allowing the white particulate
yeah,
to get in.
yeah. So we gone back and forth on that. I used to run Cock Slurry. We can get Craig on to talk. The details about it, I think, are uninteresting. It is another way to go. But I am seeing people designing ways to feed Cock Slurry to their tanks, which are just asking for overdoses.
Yeah. And then you find out they have a 30-gallon aquarium, and it's like
it's just nuts.
I think the last one I had is stuff that we already answered. If you have something to add
yeah, check out. We can link to. I think one of my Magna talks has it in there. I think critical thinking is really important for everybody, for everything. I think it's really important for reef tanks, and you just have to figure out what makes sense to you.
Well, I think the problem becomes when you're like a new person in the hobby, and when you're in a store and you look on the shelf and you just see all these bottles that they say they do this. I mean, you can differentiate by, here's a bottle of calcium chloride. Guess what? It's just a bottle of calcium chloride. It doesn't say, we'll raise your calcium level. That's fine. It's just a bottle of calcium chloride. But then here's this bottle of stuff, and it may or may not say what's in it, but and it's like, we'll raise your oxygen levels and help fish fight parasites, and we'll do, it's starting to claim, and you're like, but it doesn't say like calcium chloride or potassium iodide, or it's just Frank's crazy liquid,
Yeah, it's
just a bunch of claims. And it may be something that Richard and I use. However, if it's not like clearly identified what it is, you got to start asking questions.
Right. And if they're not going to tell you what's in it, they better have some really damn good evidence that it does what they say it does.
Wait a minute too. And this is from someone that worked in stores for a decade. What I just said a second ago, well, because hold on, it ties into it. What I said a second ago is ask questions. And I hate that this sounds negative, but I'm not saying ask a salesman to answer those questions. Because the thing that I always say is be careful about getting your information from someone who has a vested interest in making money from you, because their advice is going to be geared towards making the money. I'm not saying all salesmen in a store do that, but just like, with this bottle, do I need this? It says this. That guy's trying to, or that girl, whoever is trying to sell you that bottle. Yeah. Now you're going to have different levels of morals that you find in a store, but if you don't know the person from Adam or Steve, then why it's like, oh, that stuff's great, I use it all the time. Oh, okay, cool, I'll get it. I'm saying go to the internet and go on forums or Facebook or call someone you trust or your local reef thing. Ask questions there.
Find somebody whose tank you like the look of and make friends with them and talk to them.
Yeah.
Join your local reef club and talk to those people.
Yeah.
Forms are going to make you stab yourself in the eye.
Okay.
You should squint a whole lot at forms.
That's true.
There's just a lot of people. I mean, forms are great to practice what you think and hone your ideas. Forms are not a good place to go get information. There was one other thing you wanted to talk about. Didn't you have a beef about something?
Yeah, I was gonna beef about. So it's people installing things wrong or poorly or badly, and then
You mean
calling
like
up the
you mean like a strip light on top of a tank?
yeah. Oh hush. Oh my god, that hurts. You wound me, sir. We're hobbyists. I guess you could say disingenuous, or I suppose you could say just ignorant. Like, you buy an expensive reef light and put it above an aquarium in an enclosed canopy with no ventilation, and then once it rusts to death, and then you call up the manufacturer. Your light is not worth a shit, and I wanted to know if I can return it, and it's this and that. And I just know from being on the other side of the phone, like the manufacturer side of the phone, where you're just trying to decipher how your product didn't go well, and you hear, almost 9 times out of 10, it's because the person like installed it poorly or badly.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in this hobby. There's a lot of room for user error in the first couple of years.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to learn. There's just
I
a
guess
lot.
it boggles my mind though, because some of this you don't need to learn. Here, and this sort of goes with that, is here's what you don't need to learn. Salt water and electricity don't like each other. Electronics and hot, humid, salty air don't like each other. If you don't know that,
You do need to learn that. You're wrong.
but if you don't even know that, even before you step foot
Yeah.
into a pet store for the first time,
But how would you know that?
how would you know that
Why would-
salt water and electricity suck together?
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean they suck together?
You
Look,
put your-
I got a shit ton of salt water and electricity behind me.
Oh my God, dude. I feel like an old man because I was about to give you an example and I was about to say, do you put your VCR in a... I was like, wait, who has a VCR?
But I got a shit ton of electrical equipment by the salt water. So something has to happen, and there's a shit ton of equipment sold specifically to be used in salt water. So something has to happen for you to figure out that in certain situations, certain setups, is going to make it bad for your electronics around salt water.
I was just amazed because the guy has the Neptune Apex in one of those nice cabinets with like a glass door, and then all the lines coming in and out to the dosers. He has them all tacked up, and they're like all this stuff. And then you just enclose lights in a non-ventilated cabinet, and everything's like puking rust into the water.
See, I think you can't expect people to know that. People make the best decisions they can with the information they have. And, I'm sure to this guy it was like, oh, well, we'll just keep it all in there. And it would take somebody going, oh, but you know what? Your Kessel is now filled with water because
And that's why your wife divorced you, pal.
everything is obvious once you know it. But before you know it, it isn't.
That's true.
I mean, I remember the reason I got nuts with ventilation when I installed my system 20 years ago was there was a guy, remember Mr. 4,000 gallon tank?
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember why he shut down his tank?
I don't.
There was no ventilation.
Oh, you serious?
Yeah. And it just rotted. There was water damage from humidity and stuff.
Now he's Mr. Rotten Aquarium.
And I was like, oh, well, okay, I can fix that by putting a big ass fan. But this was all after learning stuff, right? After being in the hobby for 20 years already. And so when we moved here, it was like, okay, I'm putting a big ass fan in here. I'm putting a big ass exhaust fan under the house.
Yeah.
I am pumping air into my sump to deal with pH. You know, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this because I know at the base level these are things I need to add to make my life easier down the line.
Yeah.
You know, there's a few things I would do differently now if I were setting up a new system.
I guess that was my, just in general, that was my beef, is being on the other side, like working for manufacturers, whoever, and then fielding phone calls where like, this light is broken. Like, well, where'd you have it? Well, I placed it 1 foot underwater. And it's like, what?
Yeah. Look, so here's something people don't think about it, right? It says in the documentation about the EB832 that you need at least an inch of space on this side for ventilation. No one ever reads that. But then people put it right up against the wall and then it burns out. And then how is that the company's fault?
Yeah, well, they say like the writing was so tiny, or you know.
Yeah, it's fucking electronics.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. There's just a lot to learn. Yeah, great show. Thanks for listening. I'd like to thank saltwateraquarium.com and Biota.
Peace. Thank you, Beefers. Okay. We weren't supposed to go on after that.
Well, yeah, we are. Now's the show starting.
Now is the show. The time is for the show.
The time is for the show.
Hey, you know what we haven't done in a while though is the little ASMR thing.
Well, we're starting the show now.
Okay. That's all you had to say.
Okay.
That's all we're gonna do with that.
My name's Rich.
And my name's Ben.
Welcome to our show.
Let's get fired, motherfuckers.
Yeah, get fired, bitches.
Oh, but Richard, because it's a little, how do we want to do this? So I had I like your shirt.
Thank you. It's dirty.
Dirty.
I did so much building today.
You builded?
I had to put a roof on a thing. And I had to...
You put a roof on a thing?
Yeah, I had to put a roof on a thing. And I painted the ceiling. And I...
What
else did I do? I did a lot today. A lot of stuff. Oh, I sanded the floor and restained some spots.
Dude.
I ended up having a very different day than I thought I was going to have.
What got into your
we have a guy here doing some other work that I can't do or don't want to do. And so whenever he's here, it's kind of like, oh, well, while you're doing that, I'll do. And then it just kind of snowballs.
Is he doing lovemaking?
Oh, yeah. Biota, it's what's for dinner in your tank. No, Biota, it's good for your tank.
Biota, the other white meat.
The other white meat. 2 minutes, 21 seconds.
Ooh, if you could say bye, Biota.
Bye. Bye.
Oh, bye. Beefers, I recently, we don't have to say what kind, but I moved a guy's little reef tank that has no lid, and I used this LED strip light that has these legs. The light is great, but the leg situation on it is not so great. The legs come off easily. And the client called me and said that the maid knocked in one of the lights and now it doesn't work. And I was kind of ticked, but Richard was teasing me a little bit because, I mean, it was a precarious situation to begin with. And I was getting all grumpy about it. So then I just had to go, it sort of like took all my profit away, because then I just, I always want to do the right thing. So I just went and got him like a whole new light unit that just has, a better leg situation sitting on top of the tank.
It's still just sitting on top of the tank?
Well, no, there's like a Red Sea screen lid on it too.
You should at least put some Velcro on those lights.
Velcro. Yeah. And so asking for all the impossible things, he wanted it to look sleek. too. So it's like, how is Velcro going to make it look sleek? Sleek and sexy. Velcro and sleek and sexy do not go hand in hand.
I'm sorry, I derailed you. You were. What do you mean? What else is installed
No,
wrong?
basically where like